In 1765, the Chinese Empress Nara was in the middle of a southern tour with the emperor when he suddenly expelled her. Her downfall and death followed soon after, and the emperor then set about erasing her from the history books, destroying and editing records and portraits of her. Even to this day, her life is shrouded in mystery, and we're not even sure what her real name was, or what she looked like. So, what happened that made the emperor turn on her like this? To answer this, we must go back to early 18th century China. The woman who is known to history as Empress Nara, or the Step Empress of the Nara clan, was probably born in February of a year in the late 1710s, or perhaps the early 1720s, though some sources put the date as the 11th of March 1718. She was a member of the Nara clan, one of the major clans of Manchu China, the region of the country in the northeast, north of Korea. She was of the Nabu family of the bordered blue banner here, and this was a period in Chinese political history when the Manchu clans dominated imperial China politically. Much of our information for the life of Empress Nara is derived from the draft history of Qing, an enormous history of Qing dynasty China, the period of Chinese history from the commencement of the Qing dynasty in 1644 down to the end of imperial rule in 1911. Work on this commenced in the early years of the Chinese Republic in the mid-1910s, and used sources which are no longer available. Also, the history of the mid-18th century provided in the draft history is still very spotty in places. Moreover, its coverage of Empress Nara is particularly secretive, and many scholars have speculated that the records pertaining to her time as Empress Consort of China were deliberately destroyed in order to remove the record of her life as wife of the emperor. But why? To answer this, we need to dig further into her life. But what seems clear from the limited information we do have is that the future Step Empress was appointed as second consort to Hongli, the heir to the Chinese throne, by his father, the Emperor Yongzhen, in 1735. This placed her in line to possibly become Empress of China someday, but as second consort, she would still be behind Fucha, Hongli's first consort. Nevertheless, the fact that she obtained the position of second consort at a young age points to the political significance of the Nabu family and the Nara clan at this time. In 1735, the same year that Nara became his secondary consort, Hongli succeeded his father as the fifth emperor of the Qing dynasty and new emperor of China. He would become known as the Qianlong Emperor. His reign was momentous and lasted for 61 years, down to 1796. In the course of it, the Chinese Empire, which had gone through a period of major internal strife, civil war and decline in the 17th century, was completely rejuvenated. Nara's husband conducted what are known as the 10 Great Campaigns during his reign, during which he extended Qing rule westward into Central Asia, conquering much of what is now Western China, Tibet and Outer Mongolia. For the first 13 years of his reign, Nara remained as the secondary consort. This was owing to the primacy of the Empress Xiao Shengchun, who ruled as consort during these years and who was the Qianlong Emperor's first wife. Her reputation was high within Chinese society at the time, in part because she was perceived as being a great supporter of Confucianism, which her husband was trying to revive through a building program. The Empress gave birth to many children during the 1730s and 1740s to secure the dynasty, but in 1748, she died prematurely. The exact cause of her death is unclear, but most accounts state that she died while on a boat trip, possibly from drowning or from sickness. Also, one of her children died from smallpox just weeks earlier, so the Empress may have succumbed to the same disease. The death of Empress Xiao Shengchun saw Nara elevated from the position of second consort to the Qianlong Emperor to that of imperial noble consort, one rank below Empress. This may have been owing to her favourable relationship with the Emperor's mother, the Empress Dowager Chongqing, who liked the second consort, and had seen to it that she was awarded with the title of Noble Consort Xiang in 1745. Now, just 3 years later, she unexpectedly became the Empress in all but name. Although the emperor had numerous heirs, by the time that Nara ascended to the imperial title, she provided further ones in the early 1750s. A son, Hongli, who was the emperor's 12th son, was born in 1752. A girl, the 5th of the emperors, was born the following year, while a further son, Yongjing, came in 1756. It is unclear if these were the only children the Nara Empress bore the emperor, but it seems likely there may have been others. Yet they might have died young, or maybe were simply not recorded at the time, owing to their having been born prior to her becoming empress in 1750. The Step Empress or Empress Nara would serve as empress consort for around 16 years, from 1750 down to 1766. Prior to this, she held the position of imperial noble consort, as the emperor, who was devastated by his first wife's death, ordered 2 years of mourning. Consequently, the Step Empress's primary task at this time was to oversee the imperial harem, and she did not take up her official duties and position as empress until 1750. At that time, her obligations became much more complex. She was required to accompany the emperor on many of his campaigns across China. Many of these were brutal. For instance, the Qianlong Emperor oversaw campaigns against the Dzungar Khanate of Outer Mongolia and the Jingchuan Tibetan people. In both instances, the Qing state's policy towards the Dzungar and Jingchuan was genocidal. The Dzungar were nearly completely eradicated from Outer Mongolia and Western China. Of the 600,000 Dzungars, it is estimated that as many as 30% were killed by the Qianlong Emperor's forces during his campaigns. Another 40% were devastated by the arrival of smallpox into the lands, while over 150,000 more fled westwards into the Russian Empire. Less than 100,000 were left alive in the lands of Qing China. How much of this the Nara Empress witnessed firsthand during her journeys with the emperor during his campaigns is unclear, but she must have been aware of the scale of the brutality. As brutal as these methods were, they were effective, and by the end of the 1750s, the Qing Empire extended as far west as the Himalayas, and the Qianlong Emperor was considering war with the Afghan Emir Ahmad Shah Durrani in an effort to extend Qing rule into Central Asia. This massive expansion of the Qing state also brought many Muslims and Buddhists under Qing rule. As one of the primary figures in promoting Confucianism, the philosophical and quasi-religious teachings derived from the ancient Chinese scholar Confucius, Empress Nara was involved in efforts to extend Confucianism among these new subject people to the West. The Step Empress is as much famed for the dramatic nature of her downfall than anything else. In 1765, the 30th year of the Qianlong Emperor's reign, he and Nara were on an imperial tour of the main cities of southern China, a region of his empire which the emperor had not traversed for some time. It was during this time that Qianlong and Nara likely had a huge falling out. A few years prior, Qianlong had fallen in love with a gentle and beautiful woman 16 years younger, called Lady Wei. He promoted her very quickly, and by 1760, she was elevated to noble consort Ling. It has been speculated that during the tour, she asked Qianlong to promote her to imperial noble consort, a position which, according to tradition, could not be obtained while the empress lived. Despite this, the emperor agreed, infuriating Nara. But another report claims that the rift between the pair was the result of Qianlong engaging in multiple orgies with local women during the southern tour. The last straw came when he wanted to make one of these women a consort. It's not known if any of these stories were the cause for Nara's actions, or what she did shocked those around her. During the imperial tour, Nara cut her hair short. According to Manchurian tradition at the time, this was seen as blasphemous, as hair on the top of one's head should not have been cut in this way unless one was in mourning. It was consequently viewed as an effort by the empress to curse her husband and the dowager empress. The draft history of Qing claims that she was subsequently dismissed from the imperial tour by the emperor and escorted back to Beijing. But this did not mark her complete fall from grace. Recent investigations have indicated that imperial records of the time demonstrate the Nara Empress was still being afforded the same amount of household goods as before her dismissal, and her staff continued to consist of 5 eunuchs and 2 cooks. However, when the Qianlong Emperor returned to Beijing himself, he clearly took steps to demote Nara. Her 4 major imperial titles were renounced, her household allowances were reduced, and her number of staff was massively cut to that which would generally be afforded to a second attendant, the lowest rank amongst the imperial concubines. At the same time, noble consort Ling, the woman who may have been in part responsible for Nara's downfall, quickly replaced her, becoming imperial noble consort in 1766. She would subsequently become known as the Empress Xiao Yichun. The Nara Empress is believed to have died on the 19th of August 1766, approximately a year after her downfall as the Empress consort, though, as with much else concerning her life, there are conflicting accounts of the date of her death. The proximity of her death to her removal from the position of Empress consort has led to the speculation that her death was not natural, but might have been hurried along by poison. What is largely clear was that she had been sick for some weeks beforehand, and it seems more plausible that her death was owing to some illness, though the possibility of foul play cannot be entirely dismissed. While the Qianlong Emperor was probably not responsible for her death, he certainly did not mourn her in any overt fashion. Where the Empress Xiao Xingchun had been mourned for 2 years following her death in 1748, the Emperor did not even bother to return to Beijing to oversee the funeral ceremony for his second consort from where he was on campaign in western China. Instead, he dispatched his and Nara's teenage son Yongji to handle affairs back in the capital. One palace official even asked that 3 years of mourning be observed in honor of the Empress. In response, Qianlong had him exiled for life. A much scaled-down ceremony was held in honor of her death, which wasn't attendant to the honors of an Empress consort. Her coffin was made from low-quality wood, and she wasn't even given her own tomb. Instead, she was laid to rest next to another imperial noble consort in the Eastern Qing tombs, an imperial mausoleum complex at Zunhua, approximately 125 kilometers to the northeast of Beijing. Because of the extraordinary circumstances of her life and reign, and the fact that so much information regarding her is unavailable that one would expect to find for any Empress consort of the time, many have speculated that there was an active effort to expunge the memory of Nara from the historical record following her death. Firstly, Qianlong didn't grant Nara a posthumous title, which is why she is called the Step Empress. Also, the limited amount of information available for her time as Empress consort and the fact that her maiden name is unclear further supports this claim. This stands in contrast to her immediate predecessor and successor, the Empress Xiao Xingchun and the Empress Xiao Yichun, whose reigns as Empress consort were considerably shorter than that of Empress Nara. Moreover, there are no official portraits of Nara, which has led many to speculate that Qianlong had them destroyed or edited in certain ways. The surviving portraits we do have are only believed to be her, but historians are still unsure. This deliberate effort to destroy the memory of Empress Nara after her lifetime cast doubts on the accounts of her downfall in 1765. Perhaps there was much more involved in her demise as Empress than the simple act of cutting her hair, no matter how much this might have breached etiquette at the time. Unfortunately though, we cannot be sure, and the Step Empress's life and reign raises more questions than answers. Thank you everyone for watching this video on the Step Empress Nara. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you thought of her life and her downfall down below in the comments. If you have any suggestions, also leave them in the comments, and I hope you guys are subscribed and have notifications turned on to get all my videos as soon as I upload them. Anyway, that's all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.